So again, it's a real pleasure to engage with you all, even though in very different circumstances. I think it's been a terrible crisis, but I think it's great to see that things seem to be stabilizing in our country at least. And what I like to do is over the course of next hour or so, I think as we do always, just explore a range of topics with the starting with the impact of COVID and how the industry has responded. I'd then like to double click a little bit on the whole area of digital and analytics and how that is changing your business. And then I'd like to come back and third part talk a bit about the quality forum and the progress thus far and the agenda going forward. So if I can start first with the response of the industry to COVID. And I remember recently having a brief chat with Mr. KV Kamath, and he was telling me he's been studying the results of the companies across sectors, and he made a comment that the industry in India has achieved 10 years productivity gains in 1 year. And I think if I look at the pharma industry, I think this industry has responded particularly strongly. I think whatever measure you use, if you use market cap as one measure, we've seen what's happened to this sector compared to many other sectors. But I want to start by asking you all, and we'll go around the room. As you look back at the last year, what has been in your mind the biggest achievement in your company that you're proud of, and what has been the biggest surprise for you as you have navigated this crisis in your company? So let me start maybe with Samina first, and then we'll go around all of you. So if I can also request all of you to keep your answers somewhat brief. First question is your achievement that you're proud of and your biggest surprise.
So thanks, Gautam. I think biggest achievement would be across the industry actually. That in such unprecedented times, right? We've never faced this kind of lockdown, etc. That we all rallied together and we were able to maintain supply security across the channel. So I think for Cipla, we very quickly recalibrated our supply chain and our operations overnight to be able to make sure that we could supply drugs across India. I think the other thing that was a great achievement was how we were available to the 22,000 people across Cipla in India. We set up a 24/7 helpline that operated 24 hours. Made sure that everyone who was struck with COVID had hospital beds and ambulance picking them up. Drugs available, ventilators, whether for them or their family members. So this gave people, a lot of comfort. Even those who tried to make it to work, especially because our plants were running, the comfort knowing that if God forbid they did fall ill or someone in their family did contract COVID, that we would have full support. Because if you remember early on, there was a massive shortage, ventilators, beds, drugs. I think the other thing was, the achievement would be of making sure that we have the complete portfolio of COVID drugs as early as possible and make sure that they were available, affordable, and accessible. So I think if I could sum it up, these three would be the biggest achievements. I think the biggest surprise was for me was the incredible amount of collaboration, whether it was within the industries, especially among the six of us, and how we got on to a 45-minute call every single morning that was relentless, very, very helpful. And I think even with the government and across pharma bodies and healthcare bodies, it was just
Okay.
exceptional how the industry just rallied together. So for me, those would be my key call outs.
Thank you. So, Samina, let me go to Nilesh, you next.
Sure. So I'll start with the surprise as well. And it shouldn't have, but what surprised me the most was how seamlessly the industry came together to collectively address this challenge. Right? As the world, we haven't seen a challenge of this sort. But first of all, all the leaders on this panel came together. Like Samina said, 45 minutes every day. After a couple of months, we stopped doing that and we changed it to alternate days. I kind of missed that morning call, right? It was almost like get your cup of coffee and sit down and discuss. But we discussed the most serious issues, we discussed the most mundane issues. And because we were doing it together, our quality folks, our manufacturing folks, our HR folks, they all started to work together in a very structured manner, solving not just for us, but solving for the industry as well. And we addressed everything, right? So the kind of documents that we generated in this time on COVID management, on the protocols to be followed, they became standards for the industry. And they also became standards for other sectors to consider. The other thing, one other thing that also surprised me was, this industry gets more than its fair share of brickbats. And I think the industry has really shown its resilience. It's really been respected. It's good to be known as pharmacy of the world, But with that comes the responsibility of ensuring that we collectively supply products. We did it. We did it together. As a group and as individual companies, we went above and beyond. So again, shouldn't be a surprise, but the positive perception change of the industry is a very welcome one. There are so many achievements to talk about, but one of the ones which is relevant to this forum is on the quality and manufacturing side. So one of my pet areas that I picked up early on was reduced testing. So as you said, if we're going to have less people coming into plants, how are we going to manage? Should we not lay down some guidelines on reduced testing? The group worked together, and the group finally concluded that they'll put the guidelines together, but they will use it only if they absolutely have to resort to it. They just didn't need to. Not only were they able to keep the lights on, they were also able to ensure that they kept the standards at the right level throughout this crisis. So I think that was a great achievement.
Thank you. Thank you, Nilesh. Let me go to Dilip next. Achievement and surprise.
No, I think both Shamina and Nilesh have highlighted industry working together. And that I think clearly reflected our ability to work as a group and solve the problem. But what I think I must also appreciate is various government agencies as well as regulatory agencies who responded to our challenges in a way whereby all our operational problems we were able to highlight to the appropriate authorities, whether at district level, whether at state level, or at center level, whether it's a problem of getting shipment out of China, whether it's getting to our customers. I think we could talk to the shipping ministry and work with them and see that ships could berth in important ports and we could clear the incoming consignment, we could ship out of this. And I think all of this industry, rather I doing it for Sun Pharma, we did it for the whole industry. And that I think has been a lesson for all of us, is that collectively we can do far more than what we can do on our own. But as both Nilesh and Shamina says, I think the comment for us has been that not only we ensured regular supply of all the products that we are producing, but also many of the products where consumption went up by, in some cases, as much as 10 or 20 times, because those are required for treatment of COVID patients. And we could ensure uninterrupted availability, not only in India, but across the world. So I think it's a great feeling of satisfaction that we could do what we are designed to do, is work towards patient care and improving access and high quality products.
That's great to hear. Any personal surprise for you that you want to underscore?
No, I actually, we kind of operate in a country where there is a certain amount of bureaucratic resistance to any which industry makes. But for us, I think the positive surprise was that in this case, we could work with all the government officials and also regulatory agencies. Nilesh talked about reduced testing, some of the regulators accepted virtual audit. So everywhere, I think wherever there were operating challenges, in some cases, let's say some KSM supplier has disruption, so change of key starting material, source change, regulators responded very. So I think everywhere, people recognizing the importance of medicine in kind of continuously positively surprised us.
Thank you. So a lot of good positive surprises. Pankaj Bhai, your observations.
So Gautam, I think my colleagues have already said enough, so I would not like to repeat. But I would like to say, highlight 2-3 things which I feel was a great achievement for the whole industry. So as soon as the lockdown was announced in somewhere in end of March in India, within 10 days, we were requested by the government that you should produce a diagnostic kit for COVID for surveillance purpose. And we were in lockdown. But I can say that in spite of lockdown, the commitment we saw from team was phenomenal. In the lockdown, we could produce the first diagnostic kit in India. And that was possible in spite of the fact that some labs were located in Maharashtra, we are located in Gujarat, some work has to be done in some other places, some raw material has to come from abroad, etc., etc. In spite of all that, there was so much support we received from everybody, whether it's internal team, external team, the government agencies, and so forth, that it was a big surprise that even in the COVID time, in during the lockdown, we could produce a kit, send it to the regulatory agencies in India to test it, get it approval, and put to the market. So I think that was a big surprise for me because I was thinking, well, this has happened. My all work will stop, particularly development-oriented work, but nothing really got disrupted meaningfully. I would say there was disruption, but nothing meaningful disruption occurred. So that's one part we saw it. The second thing is that the ability of the team to rise to the challenges which we faced. When Dilip bhai just mentioned about one thing is that some of the products our demand requirement went up almost 10 or 12, 15 fold. And in that scenario, we could produce and supply large quantity of medicines across the world, which was, of course, a great commitment which we show. And there was a great commitment of each other to help if there was a problem. And I think that is really was the biggest achievement, I would say, during the period. Surprises, I think I would only say that I never expected that things can happen so fast in India. But we know that things are happening in now hours and minutes and days, but not in weeks and months. And I only wish that this becomes next normal. Thank you.
I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to come back to that to understand how much of this will stick. Satish, your thoughts?
Sure. Gautam, I apologize, but the connection seems to be a little bit slow once in a while. But
Yeah.
I'll try to switch my video off once in a while in case it does that. But let me just go ahead and answer the question quickly, and also because all my colleagues have talked about the thing, and it's the common thought, Gautam, is very clear. I think the alacrity with which the industry came together and took on the challenge, I think was very, very I think heartening to all of us on one side, because we would finally get together and make sure that we solve the problems not just for ourselves but actually ultimately for the people who matter, which is the patients across the country. I think that's the one. In terms of this whole collaboration part of it is something really surprising part of it. As far as the companies, being able to keep the continuity in the business going and being able to reach medicines to the people, keeping our employees safe. It's just like all our colleagues in the industry have said, that's something definitely we feel proud of. But in addition, I would also say that especially the huge lot of volunteers across the company, especially when there were these challenges of migrant workers and things like that. The way our employees rose to the occasion, also volunteers' efforts, in terms of providing help, in terms of providing meals, in terms of providing dry, those things which they did society. I was very proud of what our people did, because it was a difficult situation, it was a challenging situation. At the risk to themselves, they went out to reach to people, otherwise would have been left in a very challenged position. So also, I think the achievement of the company is also in terms of accelerating a lot of things, especially on the digital front. That's something which all our people have done extremely well, because it will put us in a very good competitive position, in the pharmaceutical industry as we go forward. All of us, I think, have faced this issue where digital initiatives have accelerated very, very much, and that's, I think, which will promote the competitiveness of the industry. So that's something we feel proud of.
Thank you, Satish. I don't know if Samir, are you there? I don't think he's joining. Okay. No, I think there are some amazing themes, I think, around collaboration amongst the industry, the response from the authorities, the stepping up of your own leadership teams, the speed with which you have responded, the agility that you have demonstrated. I think there's a lot to be proud of here. But unfortunately, the pandemic isn't over yet. As we all know, there is still quite a bit of concern, even in India, about potentially a wave two. I'm personally concerned about what's happening in Mumbai. We don't know how it's going to unfold in India and still in many parts of the world. And depending on which researcher you talk to, some of them think this is a year, 1, 2, 3 year phenomena still. So I want to ask you, what is the biggest challenge? Given that the pandemic is not over, what is the biggest challenge for the industry and for you personally in your company? If you can just go around quickly and maybe just change the order a little bit this time. Start with you, Pankaj Bhai. What is the biggest challenge given
So
that the pandemic is not over?
So I think the relaxation, which people thinking that pandemic is now not there, and taking liberty, not following the right behavior with respect to COVID related behavior, could be a big challenge going forward, because that would actually end up into getting into the problem again. So I think keeping employees to think that we will have to continue working with all those precautions will be equally important, and that is one thing which we have to look at it. The second thing would be that because we have been working from home, many of us from home for a very, very long time, to learning to now go to the office and work in few days a week be another challenge which we all I'm going to see, particularly for me, of course, but of course for many other people. I think we need to also gear up ourselves that now that the COVID is little bit is lesser compared to the challenge we had before, we need to really find out how do we come to somewhat of a normal operation as far as physical presence are concerned.
Thank you. Let me go to Nilesh, you next.
I'm in Bombay. I think it's important not to bring our guard down. I think India seems to have dodged a bullet. But till we are vaccinated, till there's herd immunity, it's important to maintain our standards, our protocols. Clearly there can't be any other answer on this count. I think what is good is that there is a heightened understanding of the role and the responsibility we have in ensuring global pharmaceutical supply chain keeps working. And that's something that we should not take for granted. Obviously, once we're done and dusted with this period, I think, other core challenges of emerging as the global benchmark of quality and compliance, as far as this forum is concerned, that remains our main focus.
Thank you. Samina?
So I think for the industry as a whole, I think one challenge remains, our over reliance on China for both API and KSMs. I think that will continue to be a challenge till we don't become self-reliant. And I know the government has launched the PLI scheme, and there's lots of opportunity for investment within both API and formulation. So that could be, give a good boost. But I also think it's important about how we use digital, and while everyone is trying to accelerate the digital journey, I think the challenge will continue to be how do you use the right digital format for the right customer and the right methodology. So making sure that you get your bang for your buck versus just doing every digital kind of transformation that you perceive, I think will be another challenge for the industry.
Thank you. Dilip?
No, I think clearly we can't let our guards down because I don't think that COVID as a virus is going to go away. So unless and until there are effective treatments, or if the immunity that is provided either by an existing infection or a vaccine is capable of preventing and ensuring that the person doesn't get reinfected, uh, we will have to find a way to live with it. Maybe like flu, there may be annual what you call recurrence during the flu season. So we may have a COVID season. So I think it's a disease that we don't fully understand. So, and it's important for us to improve our understanding about the disease, how to live with it. At least in Sun Pharma, I think what we are trying to do is stay alert, not allow our guards to be down, ensure that we continue to talk to all the Sun employees so that they continue to manage their life as our work environment where we are safe, as well as we don't kind of end up infecting people when they come to work. And I think that is what I'm really proud of, is that if I see our overall performance, then less than 1% of the COVID positive cases have been from the work. All other cases have been when people came back from holidays or they got it from some group gathering outside of the work that they have done. So I think, and that will have to be the new normal. But I think vaccines will possibly give some kind of longer term solution. Treatment, I think, is a important option, and I see many drugs that are under advanced stage of development have ability to significantly reduce the viral load in a very short period of time. So multiple treatment options so that potential risk and fatality of the disease over time will come down.
Thank you. Satish, what do you think the biggest challenge still ahead?
Sure, I think it's still the two V's, the variants and the vaccination, right? So the variants part is worrying because we are seeing the increased cases, especially in India now. Exactly is the reason for it. Variant seems to be one of the reasons. The question is that we have to live with this, right? Like all of my colleagues have said, you can't let our guard down. We have to continue to keep the safety practices going. All this is very important. While we do that, it's also the important piece is the pace of vaccination. It's a large country, and even if you see across the world, it's not just that we vaccinate the whole country here. It's also about other countries. Yeah, and the pace of vaccination that takes place, we are fortunate at least, that there are vaccine manufacturers in India who will make sure that the capacities reach everybody. But the question is, can we cover the entire population? And this, again, the issue of variants, right? So if some of them don't work against the variants, also giving those boosters, developing vaccines against that, and also the improving the treatments. All this become very, very important. So it is still a challenging situation. It's not over yet. That's something I take away from this. That the challenge still remains. Other parties also within the company at Dr. Reddy's, it's also that the gains that we have got, simplifying a lot of processes, accelerating the digital part of it, and also the costs part of it which we are control to keep doing that and keep leveraging that. I think that's an important challenge to continue.
Thank you. So I love the V2, by the way, the variant and the vaccine. This, retaining the gains, getting back to the office, digital adoption, KSM supply chain. Thank you for the range of challenges. I want to now shift to the next chapter of discussion around digital. And Samina, you referred to it, and Satish, you just mentioned it. I think one of my clients had a nice line. He said, COVID has paid for all the change management cost of driving digital in the companies. And some of the areas like telemedicine was apparently in the government system for 20 years, and it's taken 3 days to implement the whole thing. So I think we have all seen some pretty substantial changes in the behaviors, both between the physician and the patient, and also between the rep and the physician. My question to you, and and by the way, now I'm not going to ask all of you on every question in the interest of time. I will target it to maybe two of you, and others can chip in so we can keep moving. Maybe I'll ask this to Dilip Bhai and Pankaj Bhai. You've seen some substantial change in some of these behaviors between patients and physicians and reps. As we go into 2021, how much of this you think is going to stay, and how much of it is going to come back? And what are you planning to do about protecting some of the benefits that you have seen? So maybe if we can start with you, Dilip Bhai.
No, clearly, as I think, as you say, that the teleconsultation, which was available for a very long time but never got any traction, I think overnight became an important tool for treatment of patients for many doctors. And clearly, it has many advantages. And if we look at it in our country specific context, then we have a large part of our population staying in semi-urban or smaller cities who have no access to good doctors. I think I expect that teleconsultation will continue even post the COVID gets over. I see that what you call digitization of practices will allow doctors to use analytics and better understanding of what doesn't work so that they can improve the quality of outcome for the patients. And for pharmaceutical companies and for medical reps, I think say for first 6 months when we were not visiting doctors, we used that opportunity for retraining our field force and strengthen their technical capability. But we also saw that many doctors who were not practicing or practicing for a limited period of time started attending global meetings of doctors. And because of the video conferencing that is much more common now, even doctors without the desire to travel could talk to experts all over the world. So I expect all of this to continue, and it will benefit the patients, it will benefit the doctors. And uh, our reps tell us that a certain part of their visits will continue to be physical, but they will continue to use digital tools even though post-COVID situation improves.
And do you have, Dilip, do you have a prediction if you look at the peak that we reached during COVID and when COVID settles down, do you think this remote engagement will be 60, 70% of the peak or 20, 30% of the peak or lower?
I mean, depending again on different specialities, because I think many specialities are not appropriate for telemedicine because appropriate tools for treating patient and understanding their actual condition currently don't exist. But I don't expect them to be as high as 60, 70%. But depending on specialty, anywhere between 15 to 25% of the practice will be continue to be through telemedicine. But that's my personal view without validation from our team.
Well, let's hear. Thank you. Let's hear, Pankaj, by your views, and it'll be great if you disagree, so we can have a bit of a debate. If not,
So first of all, Gautam, digital is here to stay, and I think that is what ultimately is going to happen. So, as we discussed before, COVID is here to stay, but COVID may be lesser and may much we will be much free to move around and meet people, but still there is going to be a challenge, and as a result the digital use in all our practices, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is marketing, whether any other activity, is here to stay. So I think from a doctor's perspective, teleconsultancy will remain more and more. And I think it is though because of the large number of smart mobiles available in India, this teleconsultancy would definitely pick up, and lot of people would basically like to save time in traveling, cost of traveling, etc., and doing teleconsultancy. Even doctors will find it easier because they will be able to handle more large number of patients. Obviously, for some serious kind of effect, people will still have to go to clinic or hospitals, and that's where it is going to happen. So the degree of teleconsultancy would differ between that. But I think what happens is, like, for example, a patient goes to a doctor where the first time is diagnosed a disease and a medicine is given. Subsequently, the patient would needs to go for a follow-up visits. I believe follow-up visits are going to be more often tele than actually physical. So that is what is going to happen. From a pharma company perspective, I believe that as a result, how do we, as a pharma company, provide a bridge between patient and doctor in terms of providing tools which can actually help this teleconsultancy, etc., etc. And I think that is what is going to be important. So of course, it's a big task. It's not easy. Change of behavior should happen because of the kind of challenge we face. But how sustainable it is a question mark. But I believe that over a period, this will get more traction.
Thank you. Let me go through to now Nilesh, Samina, and Satish on a related topic around health ecosystems. I think if you look at other markets, you look at in China, a company like Ping An, which is an insurance company, launched a company called Good Doctor, which is now a multi-billion-dollar venture. You look at South Africa, there's a company called Vitality, which is now promising, improvement in health outcomes and actually showing a substantial difference between their patient base and others. Similarly, there's a company called Livinggo in the US that I'm told is valued at $20 billion plus because it is committing to better cardio-metabolic health outcomes for patients, etc., etc. We are seeing a convergence between pharma companies, insurance companies, healthcare providers, technology players. So my question to the three of you, and we can go one by one, is do you see such major health ecosystem developing in India? And if so, what is the implication for you as a pharma company in terms of the role you're going to play in that ecosystem? So maybe we'll start with you, Nilesh.
So it's interesting. We've been watching these, and obviously some of them have accelerated in the times of COVID. I think one of the big challenges with India, also an opportunity, is that it's a private pay market, and I think it's a little different than some of the other plays, because most of the others that you're talking about, there's a role for an insurer, there's a role for a medical system. It's very different in India, right? So, I'm sure most of us will pay from our own pockets for the COVID vaccine when we get it. Satish will probably sponsor all of us, but it's just I think that is the one challenge. I think it's a real opportunity. What we've seen in the COVID times is that the role of the doctor, I think remains sacrosanct, but I think there's increasingly a lot more role of educating the patient, of connecting with the patient to provide an adjacent set of services. And it'll be interesting. And I think there's already several companies trying it in India. They're fledgling at this point of time, but it'll be interesting to see if one can come up to scale.
Okay. Samina, your thoughts? And by the way, as you're thinking about it, one thing I want all of you to comment on is, as an incumbent, you could see a lot of attackers coming into this space, but how well is the incumbent positioned? And if I look at a very different industry, fintech, you look at a State Bank of India with an incumbent 200-year-old bank, but it has moved very fast and shown that an elephant can dance and built Yono, which is now a multi-billion-dollar marketplace that nobody would have expected that State Bank of India could be playing in this space. So I just shared that as an example. And as we think about competing with the attackers, what does it mean for the pharma companies as incumbents? But let me go ahead and hear from Samina and Satish. Samina, over to you. What do you think?
Yeah, so I definitely think, there's a shift from curative care to preventive care. And I think there's a ton of awareness among patients today and, about building ecosystems that are preventive in nature. I think you see, a lot of these technology companies coming in to provide, like Nilesh mentioned, adjacencies and services. We partnered with a company called Wealthy, and how do you provide patient centricity around cardiometabolic diseases? How do you bring about adherence in drug delivery? So I think a lot of the technology maybe has to be spun around, do you provide a better service offering to your patient? And I think more than competing with these digital providers is how do you partner with them? How do you partner with them, approach your patient, and make sure that this is a fantastic partnership that solves both the curative, the preventive, as well as the adherence? Because I think in a lot of chronic diseases, adherence is a huge challenge today in India, whether it's on respiratories or cardiometabolic. So can we use technology to help build this adherence? And I think it could be quite formidable.
Okay. Satish, would you like to share your thoughts? And I know you have got some experiments going on in the insurance space also. Satish, can you hear us?
His image is frozen, I think.
Yeah. Okay. While we're waiting for Satish, on this part of the conversation, Dilip Bhai or Pankaj Bhai, would you like to make any comment? How do you see this ecosystem developing in India? And where do you see the pharma players positioned?
No, I expect technology to have impact on all parts of business that we are doing. Whether it is research, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is sales and marketing. And we can use technology and digitization to improve the quality of our performance in each of this. I expect digital changes to improve the speed with which new products can be developed and brought to market. Uh, Drugs which possibly don't require the same extensive clinical studies and animal studies that they require today, because you can develop some kind of simulated outcome based on certain surrogate measures. And I see that regulators will continue to improve their understanding of technology so that we can do far better, and that will help reduce the cost of drug development and ultimately produce benefit for patients. But all the other issues that you talk about is that how do we provide benefit to patients in terms of outcome and in terms of uh, clinical benefits, because many things beyond what we give pharmaceuticals is impact of our diet, impact of our physical activity. Shamina talked about the role of uh, metabolic disease and adherence to treatment, but also adherence to a lifestyle and adherence to a certain way of living, and with appropriate level of measures so that it helps people improve quality of their sleep, improve the type of food that they take. And there are multiple companies who are working on this. And I think as greater clarity will emerge, I am sure that, like Shamina talked about, companies will partner with uh, companies like this so that patients in India can benefit.
Thank you. Satish, are you back? By the way, I saw you and then you're gone. Pankaj bhai, your comment on this topic, beyond the pill, going beyond the pill?
So I would just give a little twist to the whole thing. The government thinking of spending more on healthcare, and actually now this budget onwards, they are trying to actually put more money for the healthcare. Plus the PMJY is going to become a game changer going forward. And I think that is where something which is going to be important to think about, that how does industry participate into the whole PMJY area? Because the point is that that's an insurance actually, wherein the government is paying for the premium, government is paying the bill, but actually patients are benefited. And the issue would be here now is that how does industry participate along with the government to make this scheme more successful, and how does industry gain market share in the PMJY space? Because typically today, most of us have very limited business coming out of the whole PMJY initiative. But if that is to grow up to 50 crore people or 10 crore families, then it's a huge market which is going to open up. And that's one area which would require some thinking, whether we digital support, whether follow up on PNJY, can we participate in a way that we could benefit?
Thank you. No, thank you for sharing that. You know, Dilip, you made a comment that it can impact all elements of the value chain. I want to shift the discussion a little bit towards operations, our favorite topic often in the quality forum. And, we did some benchmarking at McKinsey on different industries. And what surprisingly we find is that even today, pharmaceutical industry is bottom quartile in terms of operational best practices. And automotive, for example, is typically in the top quartile. And when you benchmark, companies on digital readiness, again, we find that the pharma companies, even in operations, are behind industry average. We call it digital quotient. Industry average across sectors is 37%, and pharma companies are at about 24%. And a lot of these digital transformations still haven't yet delivered meaningful impact, other than in a few places. It's So my question is, maybe we can start with you, Dilibhai, and then I will go to the others. What has been the experience thus far in driving real productivity, reliability, gains using data analytics and automation on the operation side? What has been the
No, I
experience
think
thus?
No, I think, Gautam, what you started with is that pharmaceutical industry is in the bottom quartile, and I cannot agree more with you. We have an independent director who is from automobile industry. I see his operation. I see them use technology far, far ahead of us. And that is the reason why they are able to maintain just in time supply chain and all of this. And but where I see a great opportunity for us is how can we use technology to develop better working relationship which is based on trust with regulators. Is that, say, today, if you see, the entire regulatory mechanism is based on audits which they do periodically. Whereas if we can find a way by which we can keep them abreast of our overall quality performance by measuring various aspects of our performance in terms of metrics, then they can get a much more dynamic, ongoing understanding of differences between the companies. And with current technology, it is possible. Is that because any audit is a snapshot in a point of time, whereas what is important for regulator is to understand what is it do on an ongoing basis every day. And I think that is our effort, is that how do we uh, use what other people have already done and adopt that fast rather than reinventing it, and whatever is appropriately required to be modified for our industry, how do we modify so that we can build a relationship based on trust with regulators, so that approval of products are faster, changeover of product processes are faster because they have confidence that we understand our product better. So I see enormous opportunity in both manufacturing as well as in quality.
Okay, maybe I go to you, Samina, next. On the operation side, where do you see? How are you doing on your journey?
So I think the whole technology plays important because the more you automate, the less you have human error incidents. So I think the push is really to one day have a touchless facility, and I know they are few and far between across the globe. But Indian pharma has always been pioneering. So I would hope we can pioneer, and have a world-class touchless facility where we reduce human error. So obviously the quality of products, etc., are non-negotiable. So I think there's a huge opportunity. We've also embarked on a project, to try to automate plants and use the entire digital piece within our facilities.
Thank you. Maybe Nilesh, you next.
Yeah, so I think I couldn't agree more. We've been laggards. We've talked about this in the last two forums as well, and this was long due for the industry. But as you hear, most of us have started on a journey. Pharmaceutical manufacturing, quality testing is complex. So many steps. So much human interaction. And in many ways, the way we manufacture, the way we test has not changed for the last 20 years. And if you think about it, the next 20 years is going to be the same. There is no way that works. And even if you keep aside things like continuous manufacturing, even right now from the machines that we use, there's so much data being generated. Those instruments must be put to good use, whether it is optimizing manufacturing yields, avoiding batches that go into out of spec, building in testing into the process. There is so much that can be done. What I'm finding, which is extremely exciting, is that so it is expensive, but it doesn't break the bank, right? So I think there's a whole bunch of extremely smart solutions that can be implemented, which will make our factories smart, right? I think we're far from it right now, but we talk about things like machine learning, artificial intelligence. We can actually build these into this. Other sectors are doing it. Other sectors with much smaller margin profiles. So obviously, we can do a lot. There is a learning curve. For example, on the analytical side, on the technology side, obviously we'll have to grow. There's a huge volume of data. How do you turn that into information? But I think that's the fun part of the journey. And like Sabina said, we too have just started on that journey. But I think this can completely redefine the way we manufacture and test.
Thank you. Pankaj Bhai, over to you.
So I think Gautam, most of the points are covered. So I also basically believe that there is a lot of opportunity here to basically adopt more digital technology, IT enabled solutions for things which we are doing it. So we've done it to some extent, and what we have seen, what the increase which has happened in particularly the operation level manufacturing and quality actually has seen that there is a development happening in terms of use of more and more this technology over the last maybe 5 years or so. But the COVID times has actually told us that we can do much more. And I think the adoption of that is going to become much faster in the process. So we clearly see that there is going forward more and more this will happen. I think all of us are trying to do many things here as far as digital technology adoption is concerned. Even in the research, there is a great opportunity to do many things, and we were only doing some kind of in silico testing, things like that, but we can go much beyond that now, and using artificial intelligence, particularly in R&D and innovation, could be a big advantage in terms of actually quickly innovate and also find newer products and newer solutions to diseases.
Good. Thank you. Let me just again check if Satish is on there. Satish, can you hear us?
No, I think he sent a message, Gautam, that he's had to log off.
Okay, he's on. All right. Okay, we'll keep going. One question, and maybe any one of you can feel free to respond. If you look at digital transformation, typically from experience, there are 4 important ingredients. One is data availability and governance. Second is talent, both specialized talent and upgrading existing talent. Third is technology, your technology architecture, what we call core technology. And fourth is your agile approach towards delivery, rapid iterative development, agile development. If you look at those 4 ingredients, where has been the biggest challenge for you? If you have to pick pace, where is the biggest challenge? Anybody can respond. I'm not going to go. Anybody would like to respond? Where is the biggest challenge?
Maybe I start. I think our biggest thing is inclination. We've just not started that journey. And I think, any journey that we've started, we've been able to accomplish. So there's no reason why we should not be able to do it. It's just not been a key focus area. And, I think we've all been high growth companies, and there's always been so much to do. We just didn't get enough from that curve. And I'm kind of being mean when I say that. I think all of us have tried this little bits of this in different pockets, but we've just not jumped into it all in. And I think that is the opportunity now.
Anyone else would like to respond?
No, I think, Gautam, in our experience, at least what I have seen, is that we have dedicated systems for different set of activities. Our quality data resides in one database, our manufacturing data resides in another database, finance data resides in another database. So I think, how do we create a mechanism and ability to use the enormous amount of data that we already have so that we can train our people to start taking fact-based decision rather than feeling-based decisions? I think is an important transition and journey. So it will not only happen with having technology and capability and people, but it will also happen with a mix of training our existing senior management on using that data more effectively and information more effectively, use technology more effectively, but also what you call add to the existing team by having people who are much more tech and savvy with these emerging opportunities for improvement so that we can kind of leapfrog. And I always keep in my mind the opportunity that, let's say, telecom industry used of jumping a few technologies and getting into mobile and 4G and now 5G. So how do we as a pharma industry in India, we migrate from, say, generic to innovation and also uh, being always concerned about product quality to a situation where we are always sure of product quality and we are always comfortable with the outcome that our production processes will produce. I think, like what Nilesh said, is that it's partly reflected by our lack of prioritizing this, but I think all of us recognize both the importance and the need to accelerate the process of change.
Thank you. I would like to now move to the last part, really try and close it in the next 8-10 minutes, which is really about the Quality Forum. You know, the reason we all came into existence. Now, it's been 5 years since you all set it up. And if you remember, we had multi-mandates. We had a mandate of capability building. We had a mandate of thought leadership. We had a mandate of industry relationship with stakeholders. And we had a mandate of networking amongst the industry players. So when you reflect back on the Quality Forum and the 5 years, and I'll ask all of you to comment on it, and I'll start with you, Pankaj Bhai. What is the biggest progress and what should the aspiration be now going forward? I'll start with you.
So I think the biggest progress is the collaboration. That there is a great amount of collaboration between the players. There is an open discussions happening around the best practices, learning from each other, and helping each other to really progress further. So I think that is the biggest achievement of this group. And I would say I've been, in fact, part of some of these sessions which happened before, and I could see everywhere that people were talking with very open mind and always com- acknowledging support they received from another company's executive, not that their own executives, but other company executive. So I think that is the one of the biggest achievement, in my opinion, has happened. Also, there is a greater awareness across the board in terms of importance of what we are doing in terms of the capability building, training and development of people, and knowledge dissemination. And I think a greater awareness about the overall aspect of quality is happening. The other thing which we also see is that we've been able to some extent talk to the external people, but we have not done enough to really take this forward enough to really get a kind of a much more support from external people, maybe a regulator, maybe a consumer, maybe somebody else who would also try and understand what we are doing and maybe give additional input suggestions that we can do more. And I think that's something which we need to think how we can take this to the next level by involving them much more. On a quality forum, of course, they come and talk, but that is momentary at one moment for 1 hour or 2 hour, somebody is talking to you. Question is, can there be, they showing us some path of what really one can do much more than what we are doing today. So these are broad things I can say, and I'll leave it to my colleagues to say more about it.
Please, thank you. Nilesh, over to you next. Progress.
Sure. I think the biggest achievement that we've had is around the collaboration to build the best practices, and that goes, it proliferates, right? So just how we worked in COVID is actually testimony of that. But just people have completely brought their guard down. They are happy to talk to each other. What would have otherwise been covert WhatsApp conversations are open dialogue. There's a fair degree of empathy between each other, in terms of understanding, this is the problem that we need to solve. And in many ways, I don't think the agenda of this forum will ever be complete. But I think that is an area, I think that will be possibly one of the biggest strengths that will take us forward. Two areas where I think we need to improve. One is on the capability building. I think while we came up with best practices, thought leadership, we've not been able to do this at scale. And once we do this at scale, it should reflect in outcomes, and outcomes should reflect in change in perception. Teresa pointed out on day one that 75% of Americans do not believe in the quality of drugs manufactured abroad. How can we be leaders and let this perception be? And we can't just fix it. We need to fix it with real hard outcomes and data. And I think that is going to be the agenda for this forum going forward. We have to fix both the outcomes coming out of regulatory inspections and the perception of quality out of India.
Thank you. Samina, your thoughts?
Yes, I think,
And I know you have
quality-
joined this more recently, but go ahead.
Yeah, very recently actually. So I think quality is a continuous game, and we have to constantly strive on raising the bar versus catching up. I think India constantly seems to be in this catch-up mode around quality, and I think incredible work's done, and I constantly get an update from my teams who are part of the quality forum, and the level of collaboration is incredible because we are learning actually from each other. I think also the level of interaction with regulatory authorities have improved. There's some level of transparency and dialogue that we've built over the years, and that has been helpful as well. Whether the trip to Washington or a lot of that, making connections with the FDA is important. But like Nilesh mentioned, I completely agree. It's all about capability development, and it's also about culture. And it's about culture, about doing the right thing every single time, even when someone is not watching. And it's constantly about drilling the same message down across our teams because that never changes, right? How much ever you up your game, it's just the inherent kind of perception about where your quality needs to be, and just that this pill could go back to your own family, and we have to make sure we do the right thing every single time, even when no one is watching over us. So that's going to be a continuous journey. I don't think it's a one-stop shop.
Thank you. Thanks, Samina. Dilipa, your thoughts?
No, I think, like all my colleagues have said before me, is that this is a journey. And if we have these four different destinations that we are traveling towards, then I see that we've made different levels of progress. Uh, and I agree that I think in collaboration and working together and helping each other, I think we've done the best. But on one particular issue, I think when I reflect back, I think possibly on the second quality forum, somebody asked us on the dais that when do you think we will achieve Six Sigma quality for our products? And I think I answered say maybe in 5 years. And where I see is that we are way behind. And and looking at the difficulty and the challenge in what this is, I think our now internal objective is that in next 3, how do we improve the Sigma quality of our product by 1? Rather than saying that we want to reach Six Sigma, because that we are far away from. So that's one realization and maybe over ambitious, unrealistic expectation and capability. The second issue, which I think if we measure our performance in terms of, let's say, publicly accepted matrices, then I think the overall percentage of first cycle approval for Indian companies is less than the average for the industry. So, and we are making improvement, but I think we need to set up much more achievable but realistic and focused objectives so that not only we improve the quality of our existing products, but we also improve the quality of our future filings, because then only long-term prognosis for the industry will be far brighter than what we can see today. But I'm very optimistic. I think that the direction for all of us is very positive and in the right direction. We may have some concern about the speed, and that's an addressable issue. But kind of quite optimistic about the.
Thank you. Thank you. Collaboration, journey, and continue to raise the bar. Let me go to my last question. I think, and again, I'd love to hear from all of you, and I'll start with you, Nilesh. My last question is, now let's step back. I think there's a lot of people who are listening to you, industry, colleagues, many of the senior leaders in your organizations. Also, I suspect some of the regulators. So as you look at the next decade for the Indian industry, what is the message that you want to send out to any one or more of these different stakeholders that are listening to you today? So start with you, Nilesh.
Sure. So I think there's multiple messages for different stakeholders. I think for our industry colleagues, we created this position that India has on the generic map, right? 40% share in the US, 30% in the world, 60% in vaccines. It was not given to us on any platter, right? So, and it is ours to lose. And I think we have to treat it with that responsibility that it's a very important position that we hold in the global supply chain, and we have to do whatever it takes to make sure that we are at the right level. So when they come into a conference like this, it's not 3 days of listening and then going back. I think there's a set of actions that need to be taken back and considered. And when we have senior officials from FDA, coming in, or from other authorities coming in, there's clear guidance, and I think we need to pick it up and we need to run with that. For regulators, I would always thank them for their support, and I think it's important for them to know that we are committed to quality excellence. We know that we're not where we need to be, but we know the journey that we're on as well, and we get it. I think there's a very deep commitment to consistent quality. We know that is an essential on our journey, and we're committed to live up to it.
Thank you. Let me go to Samina. You next.
I think it's about continue to maintain our leadership position, like Nilesh mentioned, being the pharmacy capital of the world, but just being non-negotiable when it comes to quality, and make sure that we have the highest quality drugs. And obviously, the prices in India are at one of the best. So why can't we make sure that we have the best quality at the best price? I think the other piece is about how do we constantly evolve, and not become static and dogmatic in our practices. So constantly absorbing best practices from across the world, whether it's from our own industry overseas or from different industries, and go on imbibing those best practices. And now, absolutely, with this whole technology shift, can we use technology as a strategic enabler versus using it as a problem solver, whether to solve for cost efficiency or supply security? Can we truly use it as a strategic enabler?
Thank you. Pankaj Bhai, your message.
So I think, Gautam, I would not repeat, but agree with what my colleagues have already said. And I would only just tell everybody, innovate, innovate, and innovate. And why I'm saying so? Because if we have to now improve our market shares, if we have to get better market, then we need to think about innovative practices in everything what we do. So I'm not talking about innovation, that means new drug or a new treatment. I'm talking about the way we operate, the way we manufacture, the way we collect data, the way we analyze the data, the way we use the data, the way we train our people, and so on and so forth. So the point would be here clearly that start thinking differently more, because if we want to become leader, you have to be ahead of the curve. You have to start doing newer things and better things in time to come. So I think going forward, the journey would require a lot of emphasis on novel practices, novel way of doing things, and through that we can regain. The second thing is we need to think about specialization. I think we've been generic players. That's a great idea. But I'm trying to say that over a period, can we create dedicated facilities which are expert in particular area? Can we create facilities and plants and practices which are the best in a particular dosage form or a particular drug delivery system? Can we also think about creating a novel way of manufacturing products going forward? Can we introduce newer dosage forms? which could be much better than the currently available dosage forms. Because I think some kind of specialization also will help us to improve the market share and going forward capturing the global market. So I think these are going to be important criteria for all of us. We have reached to a stage. We can grow a little more further, of course, yes. But the question is, competition is going to stay across the world. And that's why we need to move forward and look at value-added products and value addition in whatever we do.
Thank you. Dilip?
No, I think looking at diversity of our audience, it's important for us to kind of stay focused on what is it that we want to long-term achieve. So I believe that we need to talk the same thing what we talk to regulator, also to our employees and also to our customers, is that our ability to grow and our ability to sustain our business continuity is linked with our ability to consistently and reliably manufacture high quality product, and that we will use everything available to us using technology, using learning from other industry, learning from other countries, so that we are able to make rapid progress in all of this. At the same time, like I think Pankaj Bhai talked about innovation, and not only solve our existing problems through innovation, but also develop innovative treatment options, preferably some products which can solve some unaddressed diseases which are currently not treated adequately. And I think if you look at the speed with which we have reached here, the next destination in terms of our ability to successfully transition to the innovation journey also appears to be feasible and realistic. So I think how do we bring about that sense of urgency and a strong desire to execute to achieve these objectives?
Thank you. Well, thank you all. I think you've been very patiently responding to all the questions, and we've covered a lot of ground from, digital in the front end, ecosystems, operations, challenges, quality agenda, and the future of the industry. If there's only one thought I can leave behind, I think this pandemic is also creating major polarization across industries. And if I look at least some of the industries in India that are going from strength to strength, and I think we can also take some inspiration from the IT services industry, which is navigating this global transition extremely well. And my intuition is that in the next decade, you will see at least 300 billion plus market cap companies coming out. You already have one. I think the second one should happen in the next 2 years. And I suspect there'll be a third one to join that league in this decade. And I think it would have been unthinkable a few years ago that India can produce giants like that. So I think as we think about, I think this is in my mind the other industry from India that will definitely produce global giants, and therefore the ambition that we have discussed, whether it is on quality, whether it is on digital, I think should be high. And I think that industry has done exactly that. They have embraced digital. They have navigated the digital transition. They are innovating on their operating model, and they are maintaining high margins despite relentless pricing pressure from around the world. So I just leave that. I know it's a very different industry, but maybe just a thought, since both are very skill intensive industries coming out of India. But let me thank you and wish you all the very best, and please keep producing reliably. We are all waiting to get vaccinated. At least some of you are on the verge of launching your product, and I'm personally looking forward to getting it. But stay well, stay healthy, and all the very best to all of you. And thank you for joining tonight.
Thank you, Gautam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam. Bye-bye.